Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Art of Being a Woman. I'm your host, Courtney, and today's topic is the art of releasing the need to control life. This is something that I have been actively working on in my personal life, and I have learned that this need to control everything in my life is due to a lack of trust. I have always struggled with understanding and accepting that everything that happens, whether obviously good and sometimes things that seem to be bad, are always for a reason and always ultimately to lead me to where I'm meant to be. It's understandable to go through something frustrating and challenging and to second guess it and ask ourselves why things don't always play out the way that we expect them to. But I believe that is when we truly start to change and grow, and life starts to move and become more magical. Because if we really controlled all the things that impact us on a daily basis, there would be no room for growth. And life can get very boring if we try to micromanage how each day plays out. And when I realized this, that controlling life does not actually make me happier and it does not make my life better, I decided to sit back and observe life for what it was. Whether it was the people that might trigger me, whether it was the traffic that would get me upset, whether it was cancellations that affected how often I would work, they really all gave me opportunities to really question and almost come to an understanding that perhaps this is for my best. And the more that I did that, the more miracles would start to unfold in my life, because I didn't fight or resist anything that was outside of my control. Traffic is outside of my control. The things that people say to me are outside of my control. The way that other people feel about me or around me is outside of my control. And cancellations at work, or let's say not waking up to your alarm, although that might seem very within our control, once something has already happened, we can't change it. And to really beat ourselves up and tell ourselves, oh, if only we were more prepared, if we were more organized, if we were just better people, things would have played out better. It's a trap and it's a trick that the ego likes to play on us, because the ego wants to convince us that we are in control of everything. And the truth is, the only thing that we are in control of is our thoughts, feelings, and actions. And the more intentional we are with them, specifically with how we react to things that happen in our lives, that's when we start to feel a real sense of control. So we are going to get into 4 steps that I created on my Instagram account, She Is Artfully Woman, where I write a lot of these topics in shorter form. So if you're interested in that, go check it out. We have the following steps. 1. Control reflects our hidden fears. 2. Understand control is an illusion. 3. Shift fear into certainty. And 4. Allow life to teach you trust. Before we dive into the first step, I want to be transparent and let you know that I began taking some spirituality courses, I believe, in the beginning of this month, and it has completely shifted my inner world and therefore my external world for the better. And the way that I'm going to unpack this topic is a reflection of what I've learned, and so it might seem more far-fetched because it's not really rooted in physical, tangible proof. But I do assure you that if you do take these steps into account and you start to implement them into your life, you will feel a shift internally and the outside world will reflect it. And I will be honest and say that you might not notice your external world changing instantly, because it does take some time for our outer world to reflect our inner world. But if you focus on the inner world and building it up in a way that you are more proud of how you feel on the inside, externally things will feel easier and better, and you will find more reasons to be happy than you ever have before. Also, if you are interested in knowing which spirituality courses I'm taking, please feel free to comment on this podcast episode, or you can reach out to me privately on Instagram at She Is Artfully Woman, and I will gladly send you a link to it. I'm not affiliated with it in any way, but I do love to share what it is that I've learned, and if you are open to it, I am here to share it with you. I also understand that Not everyone has the time to begin a course, and not everyone is ready to dive deep into spirituality. And so I like to blend the spiritual lessons that I've learned and that I've implemented along with my own life experiences through my own mistakes, quote unquote. And I hope that it shines through in the things that I say and the things that I write. Now, let's get into number 1. Control reflects our hidden fears. The idea of needing to have control over our lives is stemmed in the fact that we don't trust that there is an order to this world. And we might think that things are random, and it's understandable to believe that. I have definitely believed that my whole life because little things can really seem pointless. But according to universal laws, nothing is by chance. And if nothing is by chance, that means the littlest annoying things that happen on a daily basis are also not by chance. For example, there would be some days when I would set 4-5 alarms in the morning because I had some important work obligation, and I would set my phone on the highest volume, and I would purposely put my phone far away from my bed so that I couldn't snooze. And for some reason, the phone wouldn't even ring to wake me up, or maybe it did and I didn't hear it. And then there's other times when I have no alarm, no ringer on, and I just wake up naturally. My body just awakens me right on time. And I have no specific obligations at all. And maybe in that moment I wanted to sleep in, but for some reason my body decided to wake up. And these two scenarios are, in my opinion, great examples of when life is out of our control. And although we can overthink and try to control why it happened and make sense of it and make sure to set 10 alarms rather than 5, or make sure that we force ourselves to go back to sleep if we wake up early, I've begun to really ask myself, how is this in my best interest? And it's not always obvious. It can take the whole day of being unsure, confused, maybe a little irritated that the way that you planned your day did not turn out accordingly for you to eventually figure it out. But I promise that if you are open to the question why things are playing out for me when I did not plan for it to play out for me in a specific way, you will get answers. And a voice is not going to shout from above in the sky and tell you the answers. No, it's going to come from within. And you will start to gain clarity on why things played out the way they did. And on the flip side, if you resist the idea that things that happen outside of your control are for your best interest, the world is going to reflect that to you, and you're going to be met with frustration after frustration. And we can go back to the example of having a work obligation. You set 5 alarms, it doesn't wake you up. You wake up 2 hours later, you missed a meeting that you had to attend, and you missed an opportunity to qualify for a promotion. And we might think to ourselves, how could that possibly be in our best interest? And we can fight it, we can call the boss, we can apologize all we want, we can make up for it the next month, taking on more work to prove ourselves and why we're credible for a position that we applied to. And the truth is, as humans, we can only see the present moment. We can try to create a future in our minds, and we can try to reflect on the past, but ultimately we have no control of either of those. And I do know that we can manifest, and we should be manifesting, but at the same time, our power lies in the present moment. And so if we make the most out of the present moment, regardless of what is happening out of our control, we have a better chance of manifesting what it is that we desire in the future. To give you an example, I live in New York and I grew up in New York. And so when I was young, 9/11 took place. And there were a lot of stories, unfortunately, of people that were unfortunate and did not make it out of that tragic situation. And there are also a lot of stories of people that for some reason did not make it to work on the day of 9/11. And I bring this up because life doesn't have to be that dramatic for us to be appreciative of things not going our way. But the truth is, we never really know why things are happening for us, but they truly are always happening for us. For example, I believe my grandmother told me that on the day of 9/11, she had a doctor's appointment. And luckily, she's someone that prioritized her health and decided, even though I need to make money to feed my family, I must take care of my health first. And so I'm going to miss work this day. So she didn't go into the city, and she lived in a different borough. And luckily, her life was spared. But again, is it luck, or is it the fact that life is always working out for our best interest? And so that's just one example. And I also understand that things can happen to us in life, like the passing of a loved one and injuries, and that can be very hard to explain, but I do believe there are spiritual reasons behind that as well. And I won't dive into it unless that is something that you want me to discuss. You can just leave a comment on this episode and I will definitely talk about that, because it's interesting to learn about the spiritual reasonings behind things that are more chaotic. And so I hope that the story of my grandmother inspires you to really look at things not going our way in a different light, because we really don't know the tragedy we avoided by life pushing us and pulling us in different directions. And yes, that was on a bigger scale. It was her life that was saved, but it can also be something smaller. Recently for me, I was supposed to go into work, and for some reason it didn't work out. Someone in my family needed my help. They were not feeling well. And me personally, I have a very easy time prioritizing my family over work. So when they expressed that they needed my help, I sent an email saying I wouldn't be able to make it, and I left it at that. Fast forward to later that week when I did go into work, I overheard that majority of the students that I would have been able to work with were absent. And even when I returned to work, half of them were absent. So had I decided to tell my family member, I can't help you, I have work, which I could tell them that, it's my choice, I would have went to work for relatively nothing. Yes, I would have seen a few students, but it's not really worth my time to go into work for an hour or two, because just to get to work takes me over an hour, and just to get back home takes me over an hour. And so, again, that's not the most dramatic example, but I hope that it puts things into perspective. I had no clue that everyone was going to be absent, and I had every right to tell a family member, I'm sorry, but people at work rely on me. And it was just a great full circle moment to hear the confirmation that me missing work was not working against me, even if I might have thought that was the case. And control reflects our hidden fears, because in the situation of me not going to work, my hidden fear was that I'm losing money and I need money to pay my bills. And if I don't pay my bills, how am I going to survive? How am I going to eat? How am I going to function in society? And that's all our ego, by the way. Our soul is not worried, because our soul knows our whole life story, our whole life path. And what happens is, as humans, because we have a mix of our ego and our soul, we're constantly fluctuating between the two. And ultimately, we want to stay in our soul. We don't want our ego to lead the way. And a lot of times it does, because it's very strong, our ego, whether we realize it or not. And my ego was trying to convince me that I was being silly and unwise and unproductive for staying home and helping out a loved one, even though that's a nice thing to do. And so I was internally overcoming my fears of being scared to not make the amount of money I originally intended to in this pay period. Later that day, when I was making my decision on whether I should stay home and take care of other people's responsibilities, I had people in my life telling me, you sure? Don't worry. They can handle everything on their own. You don't need to help them. It's fine. Go make your money. You work hard. You deserve it. And I am not going to lie, it was so tempting, because everyone was validating me to go make money. And they all had good intentions. But at the same time, I knew they were all feeding my ego. They were all telling me, without realizing, give in to your fear. You need to make money or else. And luckily, I was able to resist that temptation. And I've been working on a fear of overcoming scarcity. I feel it's a very real fear to have, not knowing that you're going to have enough money to survive. I have definitely been through that when I was younger. But now that I am fortunate enough to have a good job, I don't have to worry about that anymore. Whether I have proof or not, I have decided that I'm not going to live in fear. And so I hope that my example helps you challenge these fears that arise in your mind whenever you are trying to make a decision that is coming from your soul and your heart that you know is truly good for you. It's a real challenge within ourselves that we have to learn to overcome if we want miracles to happen in our life. If we fall under pressure from our fears, we're going to end up believing that if we don't control every aspect of our lives, it's going to fall apart. And maybe you are someone like me who has controlled every bit of your life because from a young age, you have been led to believe that had you not done that, everything would fall apart. But I guarantee you, the moment you release that control, things might feel like they're falling apart in the beginning, but it's all falling into place. And it might not be how you envisioned it, but that might be better than what you envisioned. And that's something I noticed in my own life. We can go with the flow. We can put one foot in front of the other, not knowing where it's going to take us, and roll with it. That is the beauty of life. Every single day, we should aim to wake up not knowing where life is going to take us, but being open to where it might lead us. And that is when real miracles start to unfold. If we try to control the outcome of every situation, how are we going to be met with blessings? A tip that I have for this step is to write down one area of your life where you feel the need to control everything. Then write down on paper the emotions that surface when you imagine releasing that control. That will really show you that it's all coming from fear. And fear is never based in logic. It's based in the ego. And the ego wants to control you so that you don't listen to your inner power. And the goal is always to ultimately destroy the ego so that your soul purpose and your inner wisdom shine through. And a side note, the reason why we might not feel so connected to our intuition is because the ego is always trying to be louder than our intuition. And so once we destroy the ego and we destroy the fears that it puts in our face, that is when our intuition can really become loud and strong. And ultimately, our intuition doesn't want to be loud. It doesn't want to force you into doing anything because it knows it's right. And there's an analogy that if you put a few coins in a jar, it makes a lot of noise. But when a coin jar is filled to the top, it makes no noise. And so when our intuition knows it's correct, it's not going to beg and force you and scare you into believing that it's right. When you know, you know. And if you're not ready to know, then you won't know and you just won't listen to your intuition. But the ego is so empty in its promises that it makes so much noise. It's almost screaming at you and convincing you that if you don't do this, your life is going to fall apart. And that's how you know that what it's saying is empty and has no value. Now, step 2, understand control is an illusion. This is something that really changed my mind when it came to controlling parts of my life. It's so funny because there are moments in life when we do control outcomes. We set an alarm, we wake up on time, we prepare our breakfast the night before, we prepare our outfit the night before, and we take a specific route to work. And without realizing it, things can go in a completely different direction. We can put on our favorite outfit, we can prepare our breakfast, and we can wake up and realize that someone else ate our breakfast. And we can realize that we had a stain on our shirt and we didn't see it. Or we can go the same route we go every day to work and there's construction or there's an accident, and so you're forced to go a longer route. And that is just how life works. And that is truly because whether we realize it or not, nothing is in our control besides for our thoughts, actions, and feelings. And the sooner we realize it, the less burden and pressure we will put on ourselves every single day. It really takes a lot of energy to control things. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't prepare for life. We definitely should. But we should always prepare and have in mind that whatever we are doing, if it works out, great. But if it doesn't work out, also great. Because everything is ultimately for our highest good. And that can be hard to accept. And I get it because I have had a hard time accepting that I don't know what's best for me all the time. But I have learned to trust that I don't have all the answers. And I don't know everything. I only know what this version of me knows. And I want to grow. I want to expand. I want to be wiser than I am right now. And I'm only going to be able to do that and get there by sitting back and observing the things that happen outside of my control in my life. And ultimately, control creates tension, and it can hold us back from actually aligning with what is meant for us. Imagine we took an alternative route to work because there was construction, and it ended up being a much quicker route. So the whole time, God, the higher power, the universe, is trying to show you, I'm going to have to nudge you to go outside of your comfort zone. You might be annoyed, you might resist me, but ultimately, hopefully, you can see the beauty in what I'm doing for you and why this is happening to you. A good tip to work on this step of understanding the illusion of control is to work on a project with someone else. Have you ever worked on something with someone else and you have your own idea of how it's going to happen? You're going to be responsible for your things, they're going to be responsible for their things, and perhaps you don't like how they're doing things. And I'll give a specific example because I'm being very vague right now, but let's say you're cooking with a family member or friend and you are very organized. You take out all the ingredients in advance, you are very neat, you don't make a lot of messes, and you like to wash the dishes right away. Versus your friend who likes to take out her ingredients as time goes on. She doesn't care to make a mess because she knows she's going to have to clean up anyways. And she doesn't care to rush to wash any dishes. And that might bother you, that might not bother you. But it's a good way to build that tolerance of things not being within our control, because we cannot control people. We can only control ourselves. And so if someone is doing something differently than what we anticipated, it gives us an opportunity to grow. And that is also why in life we deal with pushback from people, whether they say things we don't like, they do things we don't like. It's teaching us control is an illusion. They are allowed to do whatever they want, just like we are allowed to do whatever we want. It's a matter of, are you going to try to change the situation and control the outcome of what other people are doing and saying? Or are you going to accept life for what it is and release that illusion that we can control life? Step 3. We have shift fear into certainty. I believe I touched on this in a previous podcast episode, and I don't remember which one it was, but I saw a post that Jordan Flesher posted. I believe that's his name. He's on Instagram. And he explained that the ego is always in go mode. Ego. And what that means is it's always going to rush you and convince you that if you don't go after something and you're not reactive in the moment, X, Y, and Z will happen. This fear, that fear, all your fears are going to come true. It will convince you anything and everything so that you are reactive and you don't think before you do anything. What we ultimately need to do when we experience fear, we have to stand firm in our certainty that whatever is happening to us, even if we're scared, is for our highest good. My example on this is with money. When I graduated school and I took my exam to receive my license, it was a period of waiting and not making the money that I had set out to make yet. And I was still making relatively a low wage. And there was nothing wrong with that wage. It was helping me just get by. But student loans start to come once you finish school, and I had my other bills that I needed to pay, and I was so focused on studying for my exam that I really did not have time to make money. And I remember at that time I was in therapy, and therapy is not something that I usually do because I feel like I journal a lot of my feelings out with myself, and luckily I can work on becoming more self-aware without having to speak to someone else. Obviously, there's only so much I can realize on my own, and I had to come to terms with that. And so when I was having anxiety about not having money, my therapist at the time basically told me, you have no proof that you won't be okay. Yes, you don't have as much money as you used to. Yes, you don't know when you're going to get your license. Yes, you don't know when you're going to start your job. But look back in your life to other times when you had no certainty that you would get a better job, that you would even get paid on time, that you would be able to pay your bills, and you figured it out. You made it all the way here. So don't give in to a fear that has no proof. Fear is not based on reality. Fear is trying to sell you a story of a future that doesn't exist. And it actually made me very emotional because I realized I had this fear that I would never be able to support myself financially. And that was not true. I have always been able to support myself financially. Was I loaded and able to buy everything I've ever wanted? No, but that's not what being financially free is about. It's about not being stressed that you can't make ends meet and that you can't put food on the table. And once I ended up realizing that my fear was so deep, I decided to release it. I decided I don't want to feel this way anymore. I don't want to feel that money won't come to me and that I won't be okay financially. And I promise you, once I realized that fear through therapy and I released it, I received my license that week. And not only that, I received a job 2 days after that, which both are completely unheard of. When I received my license and I told my family members and I told the agency that I planned to work with, they were in shock and disbelief. They all told me that they did not expect me to work for at least 2 months after I took my exam, because that is the general process of things. And I truly believe that because I faced my fear and I admitted that I was lacking certainty, that is when the universe allowed all the blessings in my life to flow in. And it was truly so emotionally fulfilling. I really cried on the day that I received my license and my job because I felt so blessed by God. And I truly believe that it works that way in every area of life. Once you really uncover the fear that is leading you to control things and you release it and you tell yourself, I refuse to allow this fear to govern my life, that is when divinity and God and the universe can come in and take over. But we have to admit that we don't have control over everything. And we have to admit that we're not always going to have proof, but we will choose to be certain that we will be protected and that we will be taken care of. Obviously, we can't do nothing in life. We can't not go to work. We can't not apply to jobs. We have to put in our own effort to try our best to be successful. But at the same time, when we become successful, how we become successful, those things are out of our hands. And as long as we put our best foot forward in those 3 areas, we will really see miracles in our life. Now, the last step, allow life to teach you trust. Our soul learns best through experience. And this is not an easy step because this is something that comes after releasing the need to control and really putting our foot down and choosing to be certain about things in our life that we have no proof on. Once the miracles and the blessings happen, we have to accept that every twist and turn along the way shaped us into receiving these amazing opportunities. And an example for me was when I went to therapy. First of all, I never enjoyed going to therapy. I really didn't understand why talking out my feelings to someone else was better than me writing them out to myself. And it took me a lot of deep inner work to realize that I don't have everything figured out, number one. And it took me hitting rock bottom emotionally to seek professional help. And it took me crying to a stranger that I'm paying to really learn that I had a fear of not being able to take care of myself financially, that I'm not in control of when I make money, how much money I make. And in that process of going to therapy, being vulnerable with a stranger, not seeing any tangible benefits from any of those things, that is what ultimately led me to blessings. And I have had to really sit with myself and allow myself to let that soak in. Now that I have gone through that experience with money, I relax more with money. When I started this episode, I expressed that I decided to help someone in my family. Granted, had I never gotten through that process of facing my fears on money, I probably would have listened to my fear and ran to work and just told that family member, I'm sorry you're not feeling well, but there's nothing I can do. I must go to work because I have bills to pay. And if I don't control how much money I make, then I won't make it. But because I went through the release of control when it comes to money in my life, I have blessings and miracles now, thank God, when it comes to making money easily. I do put in the effort. I do show up to work whenever I can. But when life steers me in a different direction, I don't fight it. I accept it and I understand this is teaching me something. This is leading me to something better, whether I have proof or not. I am certain about it, and it's very freeing. Now, I will add on another layer and say this is just one area of my life, and it's important for me to remember this story in other areas of my life, whether it's with dating, whether it's with family, whether it's with trying to buy a new car or a new house. There's always going to be twists and turns along the way. You'll get some no's, you'll get some not nows, and ultimately they're always for our best interest. And perhaps it's to show us our own insecurities and fears in these areas of life. And once we unpack these fears and we release control and we ground ourselves in certainty, that is when everything starts to go right. And ultimately, that is something we do have control over. Isn't that so interesting? If we work on our actions, our thoughts, and our feelings, and we build that certainty within, and we cultivate a strong mindset, and we challenge those fearful thoughts, we end up having a lot more control over the amount of blessings that flow into our lives than we originally did. And that is the beautiful lesson of the art of releasing the need to control life. Because the more we release the need to control life, the more life starts to happen exactly how we would have wanted it or better. And that is truly what we all want for ourselves. A tip I have for this last step is to perform a small, unplanned act of selfless kindness, such as paying for someone's coffee, compliment a stranger, and trust that the energy that you put out will come back to you. Not when you want it. It might not come back when you put on a new outfit or when you get a new haircut and you're expecting to receive something from other people, but it might happen when you are running late to work and someone can compliment you in those moments when you least expect it, but that's when the universe knows you needed it the most. So that is a great hack if you do want to witness how life always works out in your favor. Whatever you give out to the world, you will get back. If you are reacting based on fears, you'll be met with more of your fears. Because whenever we do things out of fear, we make it stronger and we give it more power over ourselves. And it's not easy. It's not easy to release control and to trust and surrender and to be certain in things we have no proof of. But I want you to ask yourself, how has controlling your life truly benefited you? Do you feel happy? Do you feel relaxed? Do you feel at peace? If you do, keep doing it. Keep controlling every area of your life. And if you don't feel that way, if you feel that it's exhausting, it's stressful, and it's burdensome, then try something new. Try to release a little bit of control. Let God in a little bit more. Let the universe in a little bit more. And watch how your life changes for the better. I hope that you loved this episode as much as I enjoyed making it. This is something that I believe life will constantly test us in, not because it wants to make our life difficult, but because we want to truly expand and receive so many miracles in life. And so if we want to receive so much, we need to trust that much. I hope you have a great week. I love you all. Until next time, bye for now.